it's crucial that a video game provides the player with a good first impression. If the player isn't presented with something fairly early on that hooks them and entices them to push forward with the game, then they may stop playing it entirely. In this respect, Billy Hatcher's opening is almost perfect in how it introduces the player to its unique mechanics and vivid game world. The first 30 minutes to an hour of Billy Hatcher for me felt like pure platforming bliss, leading me to want to play the game more and more. Unfortunately, this feeling didn't last very long after the opening sequence. Despite the game containing some good ideas, it also has an awful lot of problems, which become increasingly apparent the more time one spends with this video game. But before I delve into my thoughts about the quality of this game, I should explain exactly what the game is all about. Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg is a platformer game which released in the year 2003 for the Nintendo GameCube and was developed by Sonic Team. Our heroic character Billy is out playing with his friends one day when an evil swarm of crows arrive to destroy his home, Morningland. Billy is then contacted by the god of the chickens, yeah I know it's stupid but so is a talking hedgehog so let's just go with it, who gives him the legendary chicken suit. And it's up to young Bilbo to venture forth and restore light to Morningland and save the day. The player is tasked with travelling around 6 different lands, completing various missions and defeating bosses on their journey. The game's mission structure takes a similar approach to how Mario 64 approached its levels, in that each level has multiple missions to complete, and once the player finishes the mission they receive an emblem, which is the equivalent of a star in Mario, and the player then exits the level and attempts the next mission. As you may have guessed from the title of this game, eggs play a crucial role, and without them Billy is very vulnerable to attack. When the player moves close enough to an egg, Billy automatically grabs it and begins rolling it. By rolling over fruits, the size of the egg increases, which makes it more dangerous to foes. The bigger the egg, the more damage it does to an enemy. As well as rolling over enemies, the player can also launch their eggs at them, do ground pounds and perform other special abilities. Unfortunately, for our hero, eggs can be broken by enemies, leading Billy to have to search for another egg in order to protect himself and to be able to progress through the level. Attacking with the eggs is not the only thing that Billy can do with them. Once an egg has grown to its maximum capacity, indicated by the egg icon on the bottom right hand corner of the screen, if the player presses the R button, Billy can hatch the egg. Each type of egg contains some kind of different power up, item or animal inside of them. The animals are especially helpful as their unique abilities are very good at defeating those pesky enemies, and they can also be used to solve certain puzzles. There's also a collectathon element to the egg hatching, as there are 72 different types of eggs in the game, and it's always exciting, to find a new power up within an egg. Of course, if the player doesn't want to hatch an egg when it's at its biggest, then they don't have to, and that is where this game mechanic really comes into its own. See, the hatching game mechanic has an interesting risk-reward meta system attached to it. If the player chooses to hatch the egg, then obviously they'll lose it, which will potentially leave Billy vulnerable. If they choose not to hatch the egg, whilst they will be able to do more damage with their larger egg, if the enemy destroys it they will lose what is inside, which could potentially be an extremely useful item. It's a very clever game mechanic which for the most part I enjoyed using. It's a shame then that the rest of the game isn't so clever. As mentioned at the start of this video, it does start off being pretty fun. The first world gently eases the player in and is a charming little collection of challenges. But as the game progresses and the difficulty ramps up, the cracks in the foundations of Billy Hatcher begin to show. If you're making a video game with the aim of providing a challenge to the player, then you need to make sure that the mechanics in the game itself all function to a high standard. Unfortunately, Billy Hatcher does not, and is one of the most frustrating games for all the wrong reasons that I've played in a long time. In fact, I found it so rage-inducing that I actually gave up on the second to last area because of how bad some of the game and level design is. First, let's start with the camera, and its classic Sonic Team, and it seems to have a mind of its own. Take this boss battle for example. I have to dodge the boss's attacks in this circular arena, yet the majority of the time the camera decides to either not move or just get stuck in the environment, which leaves me not being able to see where the boss is, making it almost unplayable. Dying because of an awful camera and then having to start the entire level over again is not fun. Instant deaths are also commonplace. Accidentally fall off the edge anywhere, well sorry, you're dead. This wouldn't be a problem if Billy controlled like Mario, but instead he controls like he has Parkinson's disease. Jumping is not responsive a lot of the time, leading to a lot of deaths in which I'm sure I pressed the goddamn A button to jump but nothing happened. The camera really doesn't help things either, by sometimes moving on its own when Billy is mid-jump. There's a hell of a lot of bottomless pits that the player can fall into in this game, and combined with the bad controls, it would have made a lot more sense just to have the player lose a portion of their health bar when they fall, rather than die every time. Game overs also exist in Billy Hatcher for no real reason, other than to boot the player back to the start screen. I feel it is a really pointless inclusion to include a game over screen in a platform that features a save system, as all that happens once the player gets a game over is they just load up their old save game and resume from the start of the level that they previously played. So why bother including game over in the first place? I guess in Billy Hatcher's defence, this was still commonplace in most platforms at the time of its release, so perhaps I'm being a bit harsh with this complaint. There are also some really strange gameplay design decisions in this game, things that you would have thought would be obvious to anyone designing the game. These two examples in particular really annoyed me. The first example was during a gameplay section in which I was sliding down a slope on an egg. I got hit by some spikes on the ice and lost my egg, meaning I ended up sliding on my backside. No biggie, I can still do this as long as I don't get hit again, I thought. Well, that was not the case at all, as I came to the end of the slope and fell to my death because the game doesn't allow the player to jump through the rings unless Billy is holding an egg, meaning there was no possible way that I could have got to the other side. So that begs the question, why let me get to this point in the first place? Why not just A, remove the hazards from the slope, meaning that I won't be able to get hit and lose my egg, or B, kill me instantly once I hit a hazard, rather than having me slide to the end where there's no possible way to progress. This really is unbelievably stupid gameplay design. The second sequence of events I'd like to point out is what actually caused me to quit the game. Now, in order to rescue the chicken elders in each area, Billy must find a golden chicken egg and then find enough food in order to hatch it. If the egg gets broken or if it falls off the edge of the map, then the player loses a life and has to start the process all over again. In this example here, I've just found the golden egg in the circus level and have to progress forward with it. So first I have to make it over this path, which contains enemies, fire and the possibility of falling off the edge. Once that is done, step 2 is to load the egg onto these rails and then move Billy through the gap in the wall to get to the other side. Now this is a real pain, as the only way to detach an egg from Billy is by pulling back on the analog stick, which really is not a very responsive or accurate way of doing so, meaning it is extremely hard to position the egg in the right place. As I mentioned previously, Billy begins rolling an egg as soon as he comes into contact with it, meaning it's really hard to make small precise movements, which in this instance I need. It always feels like you're fighting the controls an awful lot when playing this game. What also doesn't help is the fact that the egg can actually fall through the tracks if it isn't pushed in the right position. Anyway, after struggling a while with this part, I finally managed to position the egg in the right place and progress through the crack in the wall, only to then be met with the spastic camera. This really isn't the time for camera issues, because if I don't get to the other side in time, then the egg can actually roll off the edge, leading me to start over again. After a few attempts, I eventually managed to get past this annoying part and make it to the next section, where I am confronted with some more rails and another wall for Billy to go through. Eventually I managed to load up the egg and get through to the other side, no thanks to the crappy camera, and just as I am about to collect the egg, it is attacked by an enemy who destroys it in one hit, meaning I have to do this terribly designed tedious mess of a section all over again. Except, well, I can't, I'm done with this game. This game isn't difficult because it's designed well, quite the opposite. It's difficult because the controls are unprecise and unresponsive, and its level and game design is inherently flawed. Billy Hatcher is a lesson in frustration. The game feels good in the beginning, but that's only because the first couple of worlds are mostly all big open spaces. When the level design moves away from this and focuses on levels which mainly consist of a series of platforms that requires the player to perform subtle movements, whilst also hoping the camera actually does what it's supposed to do, the game just kind of falls apart. The controls and the game mechanics just aren't good enough to be able to deal with this kind of level design, and the second half of the game feels more increasingly broken the further you progress. I admire the egg mechanics for their uniqueness, and it does have some very good ideas, but the final execution of them is let down by the abysmal game that surrounds it. Billy Hatcher is very hit and miss. It had the potential to be a fun, light-hearted platformer, but instead turned out to be a chore to play. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you like this video or leave a comment, and I hope to see you soon. Till next time, goodbye.